This is Brian Johnson from Finance and Commerce, and I'm pleased to be joined by Dan Peterson, who was recently named Director of Kraus-Anderson's newly created Advisory Services Mission Critical platform. Peterson brings more than 20 years of experience working closely with owners, operators, and investors across the full life cycle of project development. He previously worked at Digital Realty, CBRE, and Colliers with leadership experience in development and adaptive reuse projects. Dan, did I get that right?
You did. Well done.
Sounds good. Thanks for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be in this role, and I'm excited to be talking with you.
Well, great. Well, let's just jump right in then. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about this new mission critical platform and why Kraus-Anderson launched this initiative.
Sure. Well, thank you. As you may know, Kraus has a longstanding reputation as a Midwest builder and developer with deep experience of delivering complex institutional and mission critical type projects. And what this advisory service capacity is for Mission Critical is to kind of, as you said in the intro, um, give more guidance, support, and resources to the full life cycle of mission critical infrastructure. And really, at the crux of that is it's the aim to help our clients, assess risk and align their stakeholders and plan deployments as best we can with as much cost certainty and speed to market as possible. And, as an aside from what they've done here for 130 years, Mission Critical is one of these verticals that's moving very quickly, but there's many different places that clients are on in their digital transformation journey. And so being a client advisor, pre-design, if you will, or even in cases where a build isn't always what is going to be executed, there can be value in being an advisor or guide through the process of determining what is best for their digital infrastructure. And so that can involve a number of different types of ways that it might be delivered. And the philosophy is such that if we are advising and working with our clients with an option or vendor neutral lens to it, we know that we're going to help build a level of trust, bringing the best resources for what their journey may need. And I can go into specifics about what that really looks like, but I'll just stop there and see if you have any questions.
Sure. And just to back up a little bit, when exactly did you start this new role?
Well, I'm in my sixth week here at Kraus. And so it's been, a great 6 weeks. It's been a fast 6 weeks. And really kind of getting integrated with the rest of the team in both what they do today and what we're planning to be doing going forward.
And also, just to back up a little more, can you give us some examples and what are we talking about when we talk about mission critical platforms? Can you give us some examples of that?
Sure can. I mean, the easy one that everyone really thinks about mostly in mission critical is the data center. The four walls with the space, power, and cooling that is hosting our servers that are omnipresent and ubiquitous in many ways, shapes, and forms. It's not just the large hyperscale data centers that you hear about in the news, but it's also the interconnection hubs, the carrier hotels and urban cores that a lot of different types of uh, companies and service providers interconnect in an ecosystem. And so that's one of the primary ones. But I like to think of technology and real estate is touching many different verticals in many different ways. It could be a hospital, it could be a chip factory, it could be many of these other types of deployments that are considered mission critical because technology and real estate have to interact for infrastructure to support a business, a society, a population that any one of those audiences would deem as a critical function.
Yeah, and in a press release announcing your new role, you mentioned that mission critical reflects the responsibility to build infrastructure that supports economic resilience, sustainability, and long-term performance. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. As I was saying before, I mean, digital infrastructure is real estate and the utility of the digital economy. And if what we're doing today on this Zoom call, what people are doing every day of their life, both in professional and personal use, is using digital infrastructure. And so, how we're using that in responsible, sustainable, and also consistent ways, I guess I'll put it, are key essentials to making both the platforms that we build and the systems we operate to be um, usable today and functional tomorrow.
Well, and you mentioned data centers, of course, which has been an a topic in the construction industry. We're seeing them all over the metro area, different projects being proposed and in various stages of development. Google recently announced that they're behind big data center hyperscale projects in Pine Island and Hermantown, I believe. At the
Mm-hmm.
same time, they've been getting a lot of scrutiny, and at the legislature, we've seen everything from interest in everything from tax breaks for data center development to new regulations, and even calls for moratorium. Can you can you talk a little bit about what's your view on the data center landscape in Minnesota, and why is Minnesota seeing this surge in development, and do you see it continuing?
I'll start with the end and go backwards. I do see it continuing. I also see that Minnesota is like many places around the country, and if not the world, that data centers, as I mentioned earlier, are fairly ubiquitous. They're everywhere, but they're not all the same. There's the large hyperscale, there's the edge, there's interconnection hubs, there's private enterprise facilities. Not all are created the same, and not all are designed and operated the same, but what I think everyone shares is the concern or the interest or the importance of these things that take so many dollars, so many resources, and in some cases, so many perceptions into account. And so I think whether it's Minnesota or nationally, if the platform from which we're having our discourse allows for some truth of the true data of what type of data center it is, what's really going on there, and that truth or that data can be out there. And there's a vehicle for transparency where available to have that. We're going to build the trust about any misconceptions about what data centers are or are not in our society. As I said before, they're integral to everything we do in modern society, and so they're here to stay. And so for us to embrace that, but do it with a coalition, if you will, to that discourse I mentioned, I think we'll be well suited to be competitive in the landscape going forward, just like anywhere else. Now, that doesn't mean that what is going on 10 years ago is what should go on today. As I mentioned, not every design is the same. Not every data center operator is created equal. Some of the large hyperscalers have been taking some, I think, now proactive activities to be more forthright about what they're doing from a utility perspective. I think of the ratepayer protection pledge that was just announced recently to, the developers that really get into the community to help embrace their needs or their concerns early on in the process for when someone wants to build, or just the accurate data getting out about really how much of these resources data centers really use is really, the underpinning of getting clarity out there so that we can evolve and stay competitive. Because ultimately, they are going on, and they can be economic drivers, they can be of value to the community, and we just need to, all work together to see that realized.
Yeah, what do you think is the biggest misconception about these projects? Like you said, they're all over, they're ubiquitous now. I think what we read about tends to be the big hyperscale projects,
Mhm.
but what can you tell us about what do you think are some of the common misconceptions out there?
Um, well, I think, certainly because we're the land of 11,000 lakes, people are concerned about water consumption. And I think, as I've said a couple times now, not all data centers are designed the same. Many of the modern designs, even at the hyperscale level, are closed loop systems that are minimal on their water consumption. And so I think just accurate data about what a data center is, how it operates, and how it can coexist inside of a community, a utility, or otherwise is really kind of one of the big areas. The other part is I think it's human nature for us to fear what we don't understand. And so with the historically, there's been a level of opaque communication due to competitive needs from a business standpoint, I think, that have supported concerns based on certain stakeholders or parties feeling left out of the conversation. Now, I'm not naive to think that everybody can be at the table from day one on something, but as I said earlier, if you have a pathway to get the truth out and have a transparency where available, you're going to build that trust. So if there's data, disclosure, and discourse all in their proper categories in their proper time, I think there's a pathway for understanding. And there can be, equity in what is being brought to a community as well. Again, I think some of whether it's the hyperscalers or developers or others, they are understanding that a community is a key stakeholder in this, and so they need to understand how to embrace that voice as well.
You said you've been on board now with Kraus-Anderson in this role for about 6 weeks. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Any particular projects that you're working on that you'd care to talk about, or anything in particular that you
Well,
can propose?
yeah, I guess I won't to go into specifics at the moment, but I will say that where I think that that is interesting in relation to what we're talking about is that it is the built environment, but it's the already built environment as well. And so I started out in commercial real estate doing adaptive reuse. And I think we're coming up in a full circle moment to adaptive reuse of not only technological assets, but other assets that may have a different or higher and better use based on what we're doing in society today. So is it a stranded power story? Is it adaptive reuse of changing the type of the type of use a building would have? These are all interesting types of projects that, based on, at least personally from where I come from both the deep in the real estate world and then also in the IT world, there's a nice convergence there to see where we might be able to create value.
Yeah, you mentioned your previous real estate experience with adaptive reuse and other things. Tell us a little bit more about that and how that prepared you for your current role.
Well, so if I'll go backwards in that, in my last role, I worked for a large global data center platform where there was a number of existing data centers, and learning the interconnection and how to help put enterprise solutions into those types of existing facilities, and in some cases help them find and devise new sites for building. Prior to that, it was in a transaction and advisory lens with both CBRE and Colliers. There was a set of conditions that were presented, whether we had an end user need to be placed into an existing environment that needed to be either modernized or otherwise occupied for a data center, or there was an M&A event for a large organization and they were inheriting a bunch of different assets, and we needed to help try to help them make sense of that. These were all sets of conditions that were try to, as I like to say, help take that vision and convert it into value. And so I think because there was a variety that pulled from both the real estate and the IT world in those previous roles, it makes you keenly aware of where you can adapt and reuse. I started out earlier in my career, looking to do that on the development front with an older building. And to me, it's always been, again, the already built environment has extreme value. We shouldn't necessarily just discount that. How can we reuse? And I think it leads to the desire to, not only be triple bottom line about it and people, planets, and profit, but also just, make use of some really good stuff that's come along the way.
I understand from your bio, I think it might have been your LinkedIn page, that you studied communication arts at the University of Minnesota. How did you make that transition to commercial real estate, IT, and ultimately mission critical platforms?
Brian, we don't have enough time. I honestly, it's been a road and it's been a bumpy road, but looking back, it all kind of makes sense. But I'll just say that there's been success, there's been failure, there's been trial, there's been error. But I'm a firm believer in the eclectic path can definitely lead you to where you ultimately need to be or want to be. And I think this role and this time, both with the market and with the company and for myself, is a great confluence of exactly that.
Yeah, what attracted you to this line of work ultimately?
Well, prior to that development experience, I was in the consulting world, and I worked with a number of Fortune fives in town, and it was kind of in the .com, so there was always an IT component related to the department I would work with, and so I became more curious. And going way back, I was into computers as a kid. I did go to the School of Communication Arts, had a computer design program. I was a designer, so I was always around computers and that kind of thing. So I was a little IT curious, I guess.
Mhm.
And I loved buildings, and I got into commercial real estate. So I saw kind of where those were coming together in this data center world. And so I started to focus on that, 15 years or so ago, because it was a kind of a combination of my interests.
Yeah, it's interesting where our career journeys take us sometimes. And
I don't know that my mother would have said this is where you're going to end up, or would she say, you really had it mapped out. But having kids of my own, I know that it's not always a straight path.
yeah, exactly. My one of my daughters is studying bobcats right now at Eastern Illinois University in a grad school program. So not sure where that's going to take her, but
You never know. You never
it's
know.
she's yeah pursuing her interests. So
And I
but
think that's, I think they're ultimately, that's what's going to save us is, are we curious? Are we creative? Are we confident? I kind of hope for those just for my kids.
absolutely. Well, Dan, is there anything else you'd like to touch on that maybe we haven't covered?
Um, no, I think again, I think we touched on some of this aspect of the data center industry as a large, and what the opportunity right now is for voices in the industry to get out there and help put some clarity or dispel or just be willing to participate in the discussion. I mean, everybody's opinion is valid. Um, and I think it's an important time, certainly for the state of Minnesota, for us to be willing to sit at the table and talk about these things in a logical, just like everything else in society, Brian. I mean, we don't need to be fundamentalists about everything. We need to be collaboratists, or at least open-minded. And I think Minneapolis and Minnesota and the Midwest like this company that I'm working for, has a great history of being methodical, logical, responsible, ethical. And I think we, are in this industry. There's a lot of good people in it that are exactly that. And so I think the more that they can be part of the conversation, the better.
Well said, Dan. Thank you for your time and thanks for the conversation. It was an interesting discussion, and I appreciate that. And good luck in your new role.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the time, and uh, look forward to hopefully continuing the conversation down the road.
Absolutely. Take care, Dan. Have a good day.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.